Shalom, everybody. I am Rabbi Olivier Ben Chaim of Bet Alef Meditative Synagogue, and I am here today with Rabbi Arthur Waskow, who is joining me on Skype from the East Coast, and who, with his wife, Rabbi Phyllis Berman, will be leading a weekend-long interfaith event as part of the Bet Alef Learning Institute in Seattle, May 20th through 22nd. You can find more information about this event at betalef.org. That's BETALEF, F as in Frank, .org. So, Rabbi Waskow, it is such an honor to be speaking to you today. You've been one of the leading, I would say, prophetic voices in the struggle for social justice for decades now. And you also have been a fierce voice in defense of the earth and in combating the forces that conspire to its destruction. So I'd like to ask you, what do you see the role of the religious or the spiritual community in the fight against what you have called global scorching?
For me, especially the way in which the Jewish community treats the Hebrew scriptures, and those scriptures have also become sacred for Christianity and seriously important, quoted again and again in the revelations of the Quran, is the fact that that whole Hebrew Bible is the spiritual expression of an indigenous people. That's what we would call it now. They were shepherds, they were farmers, they were fisher folk, and they understood that the profound way of getting in touch with divine energy was in relationship with the earth. And it begins with the story of disaster in relationship between human beings and the earth. There are many ways to read the Garden of Eden story. One of them is that God, the name of God, the version of the name of God that is only pronounceable, if you call it pronouncing, just by breathing, what came out was a breath. So the breath of life says to the human race, there's incredible abundance here. You, human earthling, in connection with Adamah, the earthy humus, eat freely of the abundance, except a little self-restraint. And the human race gobbles up everything in sight. And the result is that the abundance vanishes. And the voice of the breath of life says, now you're going to have to work so hard to sweat or pour down your face every day of your life. And the earth will give forth mostly thorns and thistles. But that's not where the Hebrew Bible stops. We go through Pharaoh bringing plagues upon the earth. And if you oppress human beings, it turns out you bring plagues on the earth as well. Then, what do you do in practice? These are visions.
Right.
These are parables. These are poetry. What do you do in practice? And I think that both Shabbat and, even more important, the sabbatical year, when the earth is entitled to rest, to have its own Shabbat with God, the sabbatical year, every seventh year, is a profound teaching of Torah about how we need to relate to the earth. So, when I read chapter 26 of Leviticus, it sounds to me exactly what the climate scientists are saying now, 3,000 years later, about what happens if we don't let the earth rest from pouring more CO2 and more methane into the atmosphere. It's important, in fact, it's crucial, that we understand sacred text as applying to our own lives. It would all die out entirely if we did not do the midrash, the reinterpretation that says this is about our lives, not just an ancient story. Same thing with the Seder for Passover. If it is only about 3,000 years ago, forget it. In fact, the Seder itself, the Haggadah says, in every generation there is danger that someone will try to destroy us, and then it says, in every generation, every human being, the It says Kol Adam, not every Jew, every human being must look upon himself, herself, as if we now are going forth from slavery to freedom. So the Haggadah always understood that in every generation you have to transcend the story another step.
Beautiful. I can wait to see those teachings expanded upon through that weekend in May. One more question before we go. As you know, this weekend is though it's organized by our synagogue, it's not only taking place at Seattle First Baptist Church, it is also co-sponsored by the church, which means that you will be teaching through the weekend both during the Jewish Sabbath, but also during the Christian Sabbath, and both communities will be there. Why is it important to you that both faith be represented?
Well, it's time for the churches, the synagogues, the mosques, the Buddhist temples, the Hindu temples to come together again and to say this crisis is really a universal crisis, and only bringing the different wisdoms of each of our traditions into unison, not conformity, but unison. That's the only way we're going to solve this and save the planet. The Yud-Hey, Vav-Hey, YHWH, name of God, is the breath of all life, which means that we human beings and all animals breathe in what the trees and grasses breathe out, and they breathe in what we breathe out. That interwoven oxygen and CO2, that's what's in crisis. If we can affirm that God's own self, God's own name is in crisis, then we can act and transform our planet instead of letting it suffer.
Rabbi Waskow, I am deeply grateful for your time and for sharing these first thoughts on what promises to be an amazing weekend. So for more information, and if you want to register, please go to our website, betalef.org. That's BETALEF, as in Frank, .org. Click on Learn, and then Bet Aleph Learning Institute. We look forward to having you there.